Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Art and Archetypes. Today's archetype is the everyman, or I guess in some circles it could also be called the orphan. This is definitely one of those archetypes that I always think about when I think of archetypes. I guess most people, when they think of archetypes, they think of like the hero, right? Like that's the most prominent one, right? The one that everyone thinks about the most. But for me, I always thought about the orphan. Well, that's when I first started studying archetypes, that's what it was called. And I'm not really sure which name Jung put on this particular archetype, but it really doesn't matter. It's all on what the everyman slash orphan represents. And I always found it fascinating that there was an archetype for the plain folk, if you will. And like I don't know, I guess you could say the person next door type of a thing. This person that just wants to blend in, not necessarily, do anything heroic, or, maybe they do something heroic, but mostly they just want to blend in. They just want to go to work. They just, there's not really much happening there. And every time I think of the everyman or the orphan, what I try to do in studying the archetypes is look for them represented in books or movies or something like that, something in pop culture, even something that will get me to resonate, relate to it better. I find examples of them, and there were quite a few everymen, everywomen in literature and in movies and things like that. Which now I know that this doesn't look anything like anything right now, but I guess what I'm trying to do is map out like a castle door. So I'm going to put a quote here from one of these everymen from literature, And I'm doing this really primitively. Because I feel like this is just an art exploration for myself, mostly. Plus, this paper that this book is made out of isn't an actual like art journal, so the paper is very absorbent. So it's eating my acrylic paints alive. So I don't know how to get this thing off of here. I'll just put it over there for right now. So, like I said before, the everyman is the girl, boy, or person next door. Okay? Their objective is to blend in and to fit in. Right? They don't have anything. I don't like the term extraordinary, but we're going to go with it for the purpose of this archetype. They don't necessarily have anything extraordinary happening to them in their lives. And usually in terms of like literature or movies, their main objective is they help the hero. They kind of help the hero. They're kind of like the voice of reason, I guess you could say, like Sam was, right? There's there's a part of Samwise that is the hero, okay, in my opinion, as a Lord of the Rings nerd. But there's a larger part, and I think that his main archetype would be the everyman, because of some of the things that he does in the books and in the movies. Let's blend that out, because I want this to kind of go from light to dark. So we can think about Samwise, and we can think about Jane Eyre. We can think about Jane Eyre. I like that Jane Eyre made the list, because I don't necessarily think of her, that character, as like the everyman. There was a lot about her that was more subdued than that, I thought. So I don't but I think that in terms of archetypes, she was probably the everyman, because she was so plain, so homely, right? And I do think that there is a sort of naivete with the everyman, only because they have no ambition to be the hero, if that makes sense. So if they don't have any ambition to be the hero, they're more than happy staying in the background, kind of a thing. Then there's some naivete there. I guess that's not naivete. Maybe that's being smart. Maybe that's them knowing that being the hero has so much, responsibility, and let's just be the voice of reason for the hero that's a little bit more driven. And I really don't even like the fact that the everyman isn't considered driven, because there's a lot of working class heroes that are like doctors and firefighters and hell, just construction workers, like they're blending into the background, these people. And, we often forget about their role in culture, but they do have one. But I think that their objective is just to fit in. Let's just blend in. Let me not do anything crazy. And we'll go with it from there. We'll assess the situation as it comes along, but really, if a better hero comes, I'll allow the better hero to take point. I think that when I was researching this, it said that the fear that is associated with the everyman is to be left out. And I don't know, if you're wanting to blend in, then why would you care to be left out? I guess that doesn't make any sense to me. But maybe it's more of a Mean Girls kind of a mentality, like you can't sit with us. It's more, once you're blended, you want to be accepted, right? I guess that's where I would go with that. I don't know what I'm doing. It's kind of like an abstract stone castle door here. It'll make sense in a minute. Now, I talked about Jane Eyre, but this actually relates to a whole other classic, because I love reading classics, that involves an everyman that I absolutely adore. So, and we'll get to that in a second. I wonder if the orphan, or the everyman in this case, is, like, if the archetypes are cyclical. I often wonder if, let's say, like we just talked about the innocent last month, and I really took some time with the innocent to see, to see about the nature of the innocent. Now, if we're the innocent, and it is cyclical, going in this vicious circle cycle, okay, of the archetypes, then if we start out the innocent is naive, right? They want paradise, they want just to be happy, things like that. And then you get to the everyman, which is the next phase. To me, in my opinion, I always think of this more as, if we're talking in terms of cycles, then the everyman or the orphan would be the one that breaks away. Like the innocence is starting to shred, right? But it could go deeper than that. The orphan or the everyman could be blending in because of what they've endured as the innocent, right? As the innocent, the naivete is shredded by, most likely, your parents, right? So some person in a parental role to you, some sort of authority figure, is slashing out the naivete to get you better prepared for living in society, right? So if that's the case, then the orphan feels there can be some alien, depending on the severity of the innocence shredding, it very much feels like a betrayal in some form. Like, it's like kids learning about Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. There's a way in which you can handle that situation instead of just pulling the Band-Aid off and going blah, 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 in your child's face. There's a delicacy that you can take, but there's still an aspect of betrayal there from the child's perspective. A part of their innocence was just shredded in that moment. And I guess it's parents' role to figure out the best in terms of their child's maturity level and things like that, but also to consider the fact that no matter how good you're telling them, no matter how much preparation you take in telling them, there's still going to be parts of them that are betrayed by you. And it'll keep happening. It'll keep happening when they're teenagers and want to go out and be out all night because they think they're an adult. Things like that. And you have to calmly and rationally talk to them. Sometimes it's not going to work calmly and rationally. Okay, I'm here to tell you now. But I don't know. It just feels kind of like that. Like the orphan feels orphaned, probably because of some innocence that was shredded from a parental figure, or in a literal sense. This could be an actual literal sense. If you don't have parental figures in the time where your innocence is starting to shred, then there can be some defensiveness there. There can be some alienation there. And I think that it's a very careful, this is a careful archetype, because there's so much inside this archetype that can get shoved into the shadow. It all depends on your life. Everyone's life is different. Everyone's life experience is different. So we have to take that into consideration, I guess you could say. But I think for the most part, they want to blend in. And they want to be accepted. Why? They want to be accepted because of the alienation. Like, if here's a group of P's, okay, and then there's a P over here. This P is all alone. It feels alienated. It feels betrayed. They're trying to build back what they thought they knew about themselves, about the world, things like that. And they'll do anything to get back into this group of P's. Now, that could be a good thing, and it can be a negative thing. It can be a lot of shadow, a lot of evil with that, a lot of angst, I think. And I think that this archetype plays up differently for everyone. Now, I'm doing this in block letters here as a way to blend. So it blends right into the background. Okay? And we'll do a little, this is supposed to be decorative, right? I like the fact that I like the pea analogy. I got this out of my local newspaper. And I don't know if it's going to glue right because, you know, newsprint paper is just hella thin. But I loved this image because it made me, as soon as I saw it in the newspaper, like scrap newspaper, I thought of the Everyman. This warehouse worker. And I often, like, in researching the Everyman, I thought about people in my life, not necessarily literature and culture, like movie culture and things like that. I thought about the people in my life that would be considered everymen. I do very much think that we can embody multiple archetypes at once, but we tend to gravitate towards probably one, right? That kind of like, yes, we can, it's fluid, but then there's also probably one that is just so us, if that makes sense. I want to write orphan somewhere. There we go. Just for me to know later that that's what's happening. Now I have this. This is just an index card, and it was beat up. And I thought, this looks very like something the everyday person would use, right? And I'm using this neon color as a way to kind of fight back on the blending. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm actually going to use green. That way it's blended on this, but it's still going to pop from the page. Oh, I hope that makes sense. And I have a quote written down that I want to write. When you compare the sorrows of real life to the pleasures of the imaginary, you will never want to live again. Only to dream forever. Edmond Dantes, Count of Monte Cristo. And if you didn't know, that's a novel written by Alexander Dumas. Fabulous, fabulous author. I have a special place in my heart for Edmond Dantes and his trials, right? And yes, he kind of grew up and became, and like forced himself into a count. I won't get into that story now, but he started out as an everyman. And I think a large part of him, even to the last page of the book, when he's riding off and, you know, to the sunset, as a count, you know, after all of his tribulations, there's still a huge part of him that really only ever wanted, let's see, where do I put this? Let's put this right here. Like he's coming out of the door of that Chateau d'If. And I love this quote by Edmond, because it's kind of whimsical, but to me, it relates so much to the everyman, because it's about the pleasures of real life, and it's about we could go on and dream and dream and dream and make up our own life and in our imagination, but then that's never going to compare to when we open our eyes. And so it's very much about opening our eyes to the situation and things like that. So it just filled me with so much happiness to put that in this book. Let's see. I want to write the information. Let's see. Let's write. What is happening with this? It must be out. We'll do this color. Goal. Belong. Blend in. Fear. To be left out. Nice. The everyman tends to be roped into a lot of like romance novels that I've read as the hero / villain, especially in dark romances that I've read. It's these heroes, like the love interest, okay? They tend to have this like fierce, I guess you could say cruelness, broodiness, that stems from them having a shit childhood. Direct, like, and it's affected them up until that point of meeting their love interest. And I'm here to tell you right now that even while reading that book, I am very conscious of the fact that that is not healthy. It is not healthy for people that go through life living these cycles of cruelty within their own brains and don't seek help, but yet the heroine tends to help them out of that. That's not true. Okay. That's not a real thing. There is, I don't believe that happiness is contingent on someone else. And I'm very much aware of that reading those novels, but it does make for an interesting story. Okay. I mean, I love my heroes to have gone through some very, very bad shit because it does make the ending sweeter. But again, it's books, it's fiction. And sometimes it does gets monotonous when I read yet another book that has a grown man living the orphan archetype. So there's a value in the everyman. Okay, we need everyman in society, but we have to look at both sides of the coin. Like, we could meet an everyman that's very, very dark, that's beating themselves up every day because of the fact that they feel alienated and they feel very much like an orphan. So, you know, another everyman that I guess because I think of this, let me just do this, that I think of when I think of the everyman. It's kind of crazy. Woo. Is Hagrid. I do very much think of Hagrid as an everyman, as an orphan, because he kind of is. And there are some things that he battles within himself about that, about not having parents. There's a part of him that doesn't know some things that he should have known, like from like a parental guidance, but he doesn't. So I don't know. That's another good example of the everyman. And sometimes the everyman can be very hero-like I was talking about Samwise. It's only heroic in terms of logic, in terms of this orphan knowing how it feels to be an orphan, how it feels to be blended into the background. Like there's a logic there. There's not a dreamer mentality with that, right? There's a little bit less naivete in the everyman than the innocent, right? I feel very much like in Lord of the Rings, Frodo would be the innocent and Samwise would be the everyman. Like the voice of reason. It's like, look, we're starving, okay? Yeah, I get it. You got a destiny and the ring is heavy and shit, but let's come on now. Come on. We got to live. So I hope to do more than just what you're seeing, but it is supposed to be kind of vague when I look at this book. But I also wanted to share something from previous that I did behind the camera, and I'll continue to do this behind the scenes. In between my exploration in terms of in front of the camera, there's blank pages. In order for me to paint and things like that in terms of seepage, paper seepage, I left some pages blank. So I wanted to paint landscapes that would be relevant to the archetypes that are right after them. So for the innocent, I did this beautiful sunrise. This sunrise that encompasses, that seems to encompass all this potential and this beauty and grandeur that very much comes from a naive place, right? And then right before the orphan everyman, I wanted to do a monotone landscape, something that looks very blended, using a one color palette, one color, and just change up the value and the tone too. And I don't know, I think that this made me think of the everyman. Like the mountains are blended into the trees and the river and things like that. And I will come up with a landscape to put after the orphan that will be a prelude to the next archetype that we go over next month. So I hope you enjoyed this little chat on the orphan/everyman. Please come back next month on the new moon for some more art and archetypes love. Much love, everybody.